Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, this morning. We have got Kevin Boden. Hope I pronounced that right. I should have asked you that before we got on here and made sure that I was saying that correctly. He is our new Alabama HSLDA representative attorney, and he will be here to help you if anything comes up and you need something and you find yourself in a situation where you need HSLDA. He will be our go-to guy. So I wanted to come on today with him and introduce him to y'all, have him introduce himself to y'all, and talk a little bit about who he is, when he starts, what brought him here, and then answer any questions y'all might have. I know sometimes there's a lot of questions that get involved in the Alabama homeschool law, and give him that opportunity. So, Mr. Boden, if you'll tell me a little bit more about yourself, how did you get into this and why HSLDA?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. First of all, for having this, it's a pleasure to talk to folks. Yeah, so a little bit about me. We professionally, I'll give you just a little bit of history. I've been an attorney for a bit of a time now. For the past 13 years, I've been in military service. I was 10 years on active duty in the Air Force, serving in 5 different locations around the world, and we've homeschooled in 3 different countries and 6 different states, I think. And so we've had kind of our experiences there. In 2019, I separated from active duty and moved to Alaska to join the Alaska Air National Guard, which is where we've been since 2019. As I talk to you today, this is where I'm sitting. I'm sitting in the town of North Pole, Alaska, pending a home sale and pending a 4,500 mile journey from North Pole to Virginia. So that's where we're at in life. And really how I came to HSLDA was kind of interesting. In April, we've been members of HSLDA for many, many years, but in April, we hosted our Alaska Private and Home Educators Association convention down in Anchorage area. And Dan Bealsey, who was formerly dealt with Alabama. And anyways, he came out with his wife, Bethany, and we got to know them a little bit. 3 days before that convention, an attorney position posted with HSLDA. And so my wife forwarded it to me. I picked Dan's brain quite a bit about what it's like to work at HSLDA and what the organization's about and the type of work involved. I think within a week, I applied for the position, interviewed with Jim Mason, and did a kind of a call like this with all the attorneys, and then ultimately accepted the position sometime in May, and very quickly resigned my job with the Air Force and did a 2-week orientation in Virginia, came back out here, and we started packing up our goods and selling our stuff, and we're getting ready to go. So
that was May of this year.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Wow. For y'all watching, there's a little bit of a delay between us, so if there's a little bit of a pause, bear with us. We're Alabama to Alaska, so we're a little bit of a pause. Now, you're a homeschool dad too. Y'all homeschool your kids too, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we were kind of our homeschool journey is maybe like some on the call here, kind of reluctant homeschoolers at the beginning. So we have 8 children. Our oldest daughter is just finished her sophomore year at Hillsdale College in Michigan, and is doing a camp in Colorado over the summer. And our youngest is 2, and then we've got 6 in between those. But yeah, when Tyra, our oldest, was in 1st grade, I was in law school, and I got a fairly short notice opportunity to move to Holland for 6 months to do basically an internship. So we went to the private school and we said, hey, what can we do? Any ideas? And they said, well, why don't you just take the books and finish up the year in Holland doing this work at home, and then just when you come back, re-enroll her in 2nd grade. We were kind of the mindset, Aaron, as we talked a little bit earlier about, we didn't really think we could homeschool. My wife said, I don't really think I could do that. But the short version is, by God's providence, we homeschooled that second half of 1st grade, and we have not had a child in school since then, now 8 kids later. So that's been our homeschooling journey. And again, we've done it in a lot of countries, a lot of states, and we've really just enjoyed the process and the learning and everything that homeschool provides.
That's awesome. First grade's so much fun. Kindergarten and first grade. We're heading into high school with my youngest now, and it's not quite as much fun as those first grade years are when you get
Yeah.
started. Okay, well, since you've only been in since May, you probably haven't tackled a whole lot yet. Has there been anything in particular that's jumped out at you yet since you've come on board? And what states do you cover? I know you don't just cover Alabama.
Yeah, so I cover, I have 12 states. I don't know that I could even name them all off the top of my head, but I do have Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Arizona, Washington, Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Indiana, and maybe one or two others if I miss some. So yeah, I think kind of surprisingly, there have been a lot of contacts and a lot of issues that we've dealt with. In Alabama, there have been a number of public school access to sports questions that we've dealt with in various places. I don't know that in Alabama quite as much, but in other states, there's a lot of dual enrollment questions that have come up, allowing homeschool students to dual enroll in the local universities, and some discrimination based on basically not accepting a homeschool GPA, but requiring them to take a separate test where they would accept a public school GPA for a certain course placement. So a number of those have come up. I have dealt with a number of CPS contacts. There's been an issue in kind of that neighboring state of Georgia with respect to some fire code issues for churches that have hybrid schools in their facilities, if y'all have heard of that. And so I've been really kind of, it's been interesting to see the number and variety of issues that come in. I didn't really know what to expect when I got here. I had never personally reached out to HSLDA for anything. I'm sure my wife had, but I really didn't know the type of request that came in. And so it's been pretty interesting to talk to member families and just to kind of help them resolve as best we can the variety of issues that they tend to deal with. So, but yeah, it's been slow and steady, and it's been quite a learning curve trying to hop from Alabama law to Washington law to South Carolina law to North Dakota, and try to learn all these laws and resolve issues at the same time.
Yeah, so we had an issue with Bishop State, which my people will know that's a local one down here, and they were trying to do that a couple years back. And I'll tell you, I didn't actually have to call you, but I was able to say, that's fine. Put exactly what you just said in writing, and we'll pass it along to our Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and we'll have them review it. And they started backpedaling real quick. Like, I guess they thought that they were just dealing with a homeschool mom, so they kind of they thought that they could railroad us. It wasn't my children. I was doing it on behalf of another family that was having the issue. Um, I guess they thought we didn't have anybody backing us up. So even having y'all there in that capacity is so great, because some of these places, they don't want to do the work sometimes. So it was nice to be able to say, well, that's fine. Put it into writing. We'll pass it along and make sure that we're all on the same page. So that was nice.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, how is it okay that you can practice in all those states? Do you have to have a license in every single one of those states? How does that work? And I know
Yeah.
Dan's got a term for me. And am I saying, is it pro hack vice? Hack pro vice? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Pro hoc vice. Yep.
Yeah, see. My Latin's terrible. I'm a terrible homeschool
Yeah.
mom. Can you explain a little bit more about that so people understand? Because we hear a lot about it. He doesn't even have a license to practice in Alabama. So what does that look like
Yeah.
for us?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and frankly, I appreciate the question, because I asked the same thing when I was interviewing, which is, how do you practice law in various states? And there's a couple ways to answer the question. The first is, I'll deal with the pro hoc vice that you mentioned, which is basically, we have associate or affiliated attorneys in every state, and so if we actually need to take legal action in a court of law, we associate with those attorneys. And work with them to deal with those suits as they need, as the case may be. Pro hoc vice is a process by which a member of a bar of another state can get admitted in a particular state for a limited, for the purposes of the limited proceeding that's ongoing. And so I'm currently bar licensed in Washington State. But if need be, I could petition the Supreme Court of Alabama for admission via Pro hoc vice to take a case in Alabama. And this is not, it's not unique to HSLDA to do this. This is a common thing that's done in the legal world. We're very familiar with it. Courts are very familiar with it. When I did internships at some private law firms in law school, this was a common thing that they did. And so it's just a mechanism because they recognize that, you know, you may have an interest in a proceeding in a state that you're not licensed in. The other thing that I'll note is a lot of the areas of law that we practice in with respect to homeschool defense are really constitutional related issues. And so First Amendment to the Constitution, Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, search and seizure type issues are not specific to Alabama. Those are obviously nationwide federal issues that we deal with. And so you don't need to be licensed in Alabama to comment or provide generalized guidance on First Amendment or Fourth Amendment issues. And then the final thing that I'll mention is, you know, as folks probably know, we are first and foremost a homeschool advocacy organization. And so one of the ways that we fulfill that advocacy mission is through member contacts and assisting members. And sometimes those member contacts generate a case, right? Or some type of court proceeding that's necessary either in defense or in, you know, filing the action initially. And so the member contacts is one part of the advocacy mission. It's not the sole thing that we do. We are not contrary to maybe what people may think because of the status that they're in, but we are not predominantly a legal services organization. We are predominantly a homeschool advocacy organization, which is why we do things like these type of events, which is why we assist groups like South Alabama Homeschooling. It's why we go and speak at conventions. It's why we work with legislators in various states, because all of that holistically fulfills the mission of homeschool advocacy, not simply defending against lawsuits for homeschoolers. And so perhaps a distinction, but we are the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, not the Homeschoolers Legal Defense Association, although defending homeschoolers is a part of the mission that we hold. So hopefully that helps folks understand how we can practice law. And of course, the final thing is, you know, all of us attorneys are very aware of our rules of professional responsibility. In fact, our soon-to-be president as of next week, Jim Mason, he and I had a fairly lengthy discussion just yesterday about the PR rules and understanding the contours of kind of our self-governing profession. And so we're all aware of what those rules are and what we can and can't do. And we work very hard to ensure that we don't cross any lines unnecessarily. So anyways, hopefully that helps, Aaron, on what I think is really a very relevant and honest question. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's great because I know we do get a lot of confusion on that. And I personally, if people who are watching are newer to the group and kind of don't know some of the bigger things, I've worked with Dan, who was Mr. Boden's predecessor, on some Department of Labor language that got changed that affected homeschoolers, and that was a national thing. And then a lot of kind of what I mentioned before. It's just nice to have y'all as a backup when we go to advocate for legal changes or when we go to advocate for our place at the table. You know, I'm no longer just
Yeah.
Erin Wainwright, random homeschool mom. I'm Erin Wainwright with the backing of a counsel that can advocate with me for you, which is which is huge when you're coming into situations and coming into places of work like state houses and things. They kind of they're looking for a little bit bigger somebody behind you. So it's nice to have HSLDA kind of at my back when I go to advocate for things too.
Yeah, and it is helpful. I have found it helpful, Aaron, to be to kind of be able to keep that eye on what's going on nationwide. And so, you know, we do talk as attorneys, we meet weekly, and so just to know, so that Aaron doesn't have to focus, you don't have to focus on, oh my gosh, what's going on all over the country. You can just say, okay, I'm focused on my area here. But if I have a question, you can email me or call me and say, hey, are you seeing this anywhere else in the country? And I can say, yeah, we've actually seen that in 6 states or 7 states, or no, this is kind of a case of first impression that we're dealing with. And so I think that's helpful just to have that national level viewpoint.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So while I still have you, I know we don't want to keep you all day, all day. I know everybody has stuff to do, but I do want to talk to you about Alabama state law specifically. We want to make sure that everybody is following the law, because if they don't, that can definitely affect future opportunities. I know I have a lot of people who are like, oh my God, I don't want DHR to show up at my door. But that's not the only thing you have to worry about. It's really not even usually the biggest thing here. But you also
Mhm.
need to make sure you're doing things for if your child wants to join the military, if your child, future employers who are going to want to
Yeah.
verify education. It's a much bigger world out there than just your K through 12 years, but that is important to be doing it correctly for that too. So if you could just
Yeah.
walk me through the Alabama state, the laws for homeschooling in Alabama and how that works and what everybody needs to be making sure they're doing.
Yeah. So, well, y'all are probably homeschoolers, so hopefully you have a pretty good sense of what the law is already. And frankly, some of you may know the law better than I do, which is maybe kind of scary, right? Yeah, so the first thing I'll note is there is a law there that, and we do obviously encourage folks to follow the law when it's there. The time to advocate for the change is through the legislature and through that process, not through simply non-compliance because you don't like it. And so that's something that I will just kind of throw out there. Even if there's laws that we disagree with that we wish were changed, we still obviously recommend that folks follow them, and then we work through the proper channels to get them changed if need be. But obviously, you've got a few options there. You can use the church school option, and so if that's an option that's best for you, that's an option. You've got the private school option, which you can utilize as well. And there's various requirements with each of these, and I won't bore you guys with what are the ins and outs if you want to do a church school versus a private school. And then obviously you can go through the tutor option as well. It's got to be an Alabama certified teacher. And so those are kind of the options. I mean, I am familiar just from Dan, just so folks know of that there are some groups in Alabama in particular that disagree with our stance on the law and where we're at. And so I reviewed them in depth when I took over from Dan. He said, hey, I encourage you to read the statute, dig into it, see if you come to a different conclusion than I've come to. And so I did that. I dug into the statute itself. I didn't look at the HSLDA summary. I didn't watch our little video online. I just went straight to the Alabama code, and did not come to any different conclusion than Dan had over the years. And so, yeah, that's my take on it. That's my kind of professional legal opinion, if you will, is that there are laws. The covering of some kind is required with this private school or this church school or this tutor option. And so I just encourage folks to find the option that works best for them. And then one final plug, Aaron, because I don't know if you'll ask me, but I'm a pretty firm believer in unity amongst homeschooling families. And so there are obviously points of disagreement. We've been in curriculum disputes and whether this person's a pure homeschool family or, kind of a sellout for kind of quasi homeschooling. And I have just found it very helpful to find areas of unity and common ground where they exist and try to focus on those and really build up from there instead of focusing on maybe some of the minutia that we disagree with. Find the areas that we do agree with, unify around that, and then have civil discourse on how to move forward from there, based on that kind of unifying factor. So anyways, that's my general philosophy with this. And so I encourage groups to work together. I encourage families to work together, whether you do a hybrid program or not, whether you're church school or private school or you swear by a tutor. The reality is y'all want the right to choose to educate your kids how you see fit. Y'all think homeschooling is the best option for your child. And those, I think, are big unifying factors that should bring homeschoolers together, even amidst some of the other issues. So anyways, hopefully that gives you a little bit of where my heart is in the homeschool community.
Yeah, no, and I definitely think that's the case. I think at the end of the day, Even where there are disagreements on interpretation, we all want the freedom. We all want to keep the freedom.
Mhm.
Alabama is a very free state to homeschool in. I hear I'm in some of the national groups, and I hear some of the requirements of some of the other states. And yeah, I mean, we are very lucky in our freedoms, and we want to keep our freedoms, and working together on everything
Yeah.
else going forward is definitely the
Aaron,
best.
can I just add one example of kind of the importance of complying with the law?
Mhm.
I've got a in a different state now that their son is trying to enroll in the Air National Guard, and you just mentioned military recruiting, and one of the challenges that she's facing is she didn't file the required disclosures, and so I'm trying to work with the recruiter, and she educated her child. Clearly, the child has gotten an education, and there's no concerns there. But one of the things I do have to tell families is I can't go back 2 years ago and rewind the clock. I mean, I can't. We just can't file a 2019 affidavit or declaration in 2022, and so you can disagree. Someone can disagree with the law, a parent can, for example, but one of the unintended consequences of that is that when your child actually wants to go into the world and launch out from um, under your care, if you will, it may just create some unnecessary hurdles for them as they try to do that. And so, again, this was an oversight of the mom. It was not intentional. It wasn't malicious. She's not trying to harm her child, but it does illustrate, I think, to a limited degree, that sometimes you can have some unintended consequences because you disagree with the law. But the employer, the military, whoever is going to say, well, that's what the law is, even if you don't like it. So just with that, I would encourage folks to fight the battle where it's appropriate, when it's appropriate, and otherwise, work within the law that's been provided to you. So hopefully that gives some context to why some of this stuff actually matters practically down the road.
Absolutely. One of the things I did, we're going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. He's Mr. Boden, you're obviously available through a phone call to HSLDA, and then I will, when this is over, drop your email address. Is that okay? When we get done, I can drop an email or some sort of contact information, and
Yeah.
if you have any questions when this is over, and you're like, man, I don't want to call him. I'm a little nervous to call him. Just let me know. I will find out the answers to my questions for you going forward. So we're looking at this is a big election year for Alabama. There's so many seats up and so many things going on, but we are definitely
Yeah.
wanting to work on trying to get a police officer bill passed that we've been trying to get passed for a couple years, and things like that. So is that something we can count on you to work on with us, and we'll work on that moving forward? And is there anything else in Alabama that we need to be paying attention to in the coming months that you can think of?
Yeah, well, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I do have some notes from Dan on some stuff that's come up historically, that maybe has not quite made it across the finish line, or that's been problematic. Um, yeah, we have a couple states nationwide where we've got some of these police issues. With Alaska is one of them. The Alaska state troopers basically won't accept it, and so that's another state where we're working hard to try to change that. So absolutely, I mean, anything, those types of issues that really our homeschoolers are not really being provided the same opportunity because of the parents' choice to educate them in a certain way. We would advocate for, and it's really central to our mission of homeschool, advocacy and freedom. And so certainly that is, I think, a big issue. And then, hopefully between the folks that are in Alabama and working with folks there, we'll be able to identify other issues that may be problematic. And I'll just put a plug too for the folks that may be watching here. If you come across an issue, please let us know. I mean, a lot of these issues come to us from the ground level. And don't, you might be surprised at how many folks are sharing that issue. Or maybe you take my approach, which was, I don't think HSLDA cares about that. They're too big. They're a national organization. They don't really care that my kid can't do X. And the reality is Aaron cares, and we care that your kid can't do X or Y. And so, but we don't know that unless you tell us. So please reach out. If we can't help, we'll let you know, and we'll try to give the resources that we can. But we really do like member contacts. That's how most of the issues come to our attention. So please don't think that we don't care or we can't help. And just raise those issues. Raise them directly to me. Raise them to our legal team. Raise them to Erin, and she's not bashful at reaching out, which is great. But tell somebody so we can put some eyes on it and address it.
Perfect. All right. I don't think I have any questions right now for you specifically. I think everybody just wanted to put a face to a name and make sure that there was somebody there to contact if there was a need. So it was very great and lovely of you to come today, and we appreciate you coming today. I did have somebody say, "Thank you, Mr. Boden. We appreciate that you came to speak with us today, and thank you for sharing that insight." So it is very much appreciated. And if y'all have anything in specific too that y'all want him to go into detail with or something like that, and we can have him back another time, we can do that too. So thank y'all so much, and we will see y'all again soon.
Thank you.